Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Inside Track, Equibase's weekly handicapping podcast, where we give our analysis, picks, and wagers for a couple of the weekend's top races. I'm your host, Ben Kudla, and I'm joined again today by Corey Patton, the CEO and co-founder of Pramana Labs, which creates all of these stat lines, handicapping content on Equibase.com. Corey, what a good call with Locked last week. Fortunately, bet down to the post-time favorite, but what you going to do? Yeah. And then look forward. What a game second to Tenma. I was thoroughly impressed with that Ben Cecil angle you had. So really good calls last week with you. And yeah, between the two of us, we went 2 out of 3 with a second.
You had poster as well. So you got to watch the show.
You got to watch the show. But without further ado, you've seen her on the Equibase podcast before, but here is her debut in the Inside Track podcast. It's Christina Blacker, FanDuel's TV racing host, analyst, and reporter with prominent roles with TVG and NBC Sports for the last couple of decades. She's also the co-founder of I Am Horse Racing and also a speaker at Horse Racing Women's Summit and a board member for Light Up for Racing and Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and a fantastic handicapper. So thank you so much for being on the show, Christina.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And yeah, I was actually listening last week and caught that Locked tip. So I appreciate that, Corey. And it was a huge effort from him. And I thought Todd Pletcher did a beautiful job really prepping him in the allowance race, having a target, having eyes on a big race like that. So it's going to be exciting to see what he does into 2025 and maybe some of these young horses that we're going to talk about today as well.
For sure.
Love it, love it. Well, before we dive right into the races, we do have a special guest interview today. Tom Bellhouse, the Executive Vice President at West Point Thoroughbreds, here to talk about everything West Point. So welcome, Tommy, to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, West Point Thoroughbreds, they've just had tremendous success over the years. In the mid-late 2000s, the model then was kind of one syndicate per horse with Flashy Bull, Twilight Eclipse, and Macho Again, with an overall total of about 400, partners. When did West Point Thoroughbreds begin partnering with other syndicates with horses like Always Dream, the 2017 Kentucky Derby winner, and Flightline, the 2022 Horse of the Year? And what prompted that decision by West Point?
Yeah, I think that we always dabbled in it with horses that maybe were outside our comfort range price-wise. I think the horse that comes to mind first for me is Dream Rush. We partnered with Lewis Lakin on Dream Rush back in, I guess it was 2006, 2007, in that time frame, and we had success. And as we went on, we partnered up with Vinny Viola in St. Elias Stable with Ring Weekend and Freedom Child. And all of a sudden there was like a little light bulb went off. It's like we don't raise capital in advance before we go to the sales. So it gave us so much more buying power. And then one day the little light bulb said, hey, you know what? It's easier to sell half of 10 horses than it is 5 whole horses. And because, it's living, breathing inventory, as being able to sell out that inventory is really our model of how we make a living, and it allowed us to be involved with more horses and have hopefully better quality going forward. And I think that model has kind of resonated throughout the industry. If you think about the last 10 years, you never would see Mike Rapoli and Vinny Viola partnering, or Bob LaPenta going with Eclipse Stable, or, you just didn't see that. So I think that we were a little bit ahead of the curve, and it really has allowed us over time to be involved with more of these type horses. You mentioned Always Dreaming. That was just an amazing opportunity that came about with St. Elias, Teresa Viola, the Bonomos, and then Anthony Manganaro got involved from Siena, and we were able to get a little piece and be involved. And that changed our business. I think, you mentioned 400 partners. I think at that point, we were probably thinking we were going to get a little smaller. And lo and behold, you win the Kentucky Derby. And we had run second with Commanding Curve and had an amazing run with that horse. And he was kind of our traditional model. Bought him out of the 2-year-old sale, a $70,000 purchase. And, Dallas took him to the promised land. And then we got involved with a horse like Always Dreaming, the stakes went up a little bit. And I think that kind of set us on a course to be open to partnering with people like Woodford and Lane's End, and with Flightline comes into play, where you have the breeder Jane Lyon, you have the Horonis family, the Manganeros, God rest his soul, Anthony and Sienna Farm. It was just a great group. It's able to be involved with more significant animals, in my opinion.
So has the ownership experience, you think, changed, kind of partnering with other syndicates in a positive way? Like for example, what silks do you usually use? Is there a certain percentage you have to own to use those West Point silks?
Yeah, I think like anything, everything's a learning curve. Going forward, I find the best way to address these things is right up front when you're buying the horse. Listed partners on a program. Everybody's going to be listed. Silks rotation based on percentage. How many of the listed partners want to be involved in that? You take for instance, Flightline. It was agreed upon basically from the beginning that he would run in the Horonis silks, and that became the standard. A couple of the horses that we own one actually that runs only in the Phipps silks, which for a kid from Long Island growing up, that was a thrill, But things like that are, for lack of a better word, negotiated or discussed and put in place right when you buy the horse traditionally. For us, we have outside partners that will do silks rotation. But, if it's a grade 1, then, he'll run in our silk. The horse would run in our silks, or if a Breeders' Cup race, just because how important it is to our company to have representation in those things. But, everything's negotiable, I would say.
Fair enough. Well, I appreciate that. I've always wondered that with syndicates. So there we have our answer finally. But so can you share kind of your personal journey in the racing industry, transitioning from working for Chrysler to vice president of one of the largest syndicates in North America is quite a significant shift.
Yeah, I felt that my life used to go in 10-year periods where I owned a bar restaurant in a small neighborhood pub up in Oswego, New York for 10 years. Went to work for a division of Chrysler out of Detroit and really tried my hand at corporate America. And it was a thrill. It was something I really enjoyed, and it took me on a different path through life. And ironically led me back to horse racing because I had always been a lifelong fan. I grew up around the game. It was always my passion. I rode horses as a young man and I always just wanted to be a part of it, and would go to the Belmont Stakes and Saratoga every year, visited, and this ride with Chrysler, all of a sudden, I'd always considered myself kind of a quality of life guy. I lived in a small town in upstate New York. I loved it. I was from downstate. I was used to the city, but I really loved it. And here I am. I dive into corporate America and have some success and get promoted and move back to the city. And I was kind of miserable, and not that I didn't love the job. I did. I was traveling all over the country and really had some success that I was really proud of. And lo and behold, I was like, man, I work all week. I come home and here I am living in a 1-room apartment and I'm not loving. And it brought me back to horse racing. And I became a partner with West Point back in 2003. And it was something that really just, my whole life, I've never found anything that gives me the excitement that horse racing and being a part of it is. And lo and behold, 5 years later, Terry Finley and Josh Cooper, who was the CFO at the time, approached me about coming to work for them. And on the surface, it's not a very bright idea to go from a major corporation and being a director of a sales division, to coming working for a small company that has 7-8 people in it. But I felt in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I'll never forgive myself if I don't try it. And I love the game. I could always go back to being in the, hospitality industry if I needed to, or I could go back to the automotive industry if I needed to. But could you really say, man, you live with yourself if you said, nothing in the world you enjoy more than horse racing, and you have an opportunity to maybe make a living doing it. And I won't lie to you, it was not easy. It was not easy when we started, because as soon as I joined, the crash of 2008 hit, and that was not a time you wanted to be selling luxury items and telling people, hey, I want you to buy a piece of a horse, even though I'm telling you that realistically, you're never going to make any money, and you're 90% of the time you're just going to have fun, and it was hard, and the quality of our horses wasn't the greatest at that time too. You know, when you're buying inexpensive horses, it's very hard to hit the home run. And we had Awesome Gem on the West Coast, and so we had some success. We had Macho again, who was on with Dallas, but our East Coast operation was a little bit floundering. Actually, I met Christina's husband, Dan. We had just moved our horses to Tom Albatrani, and Dan was an assistant in New York to Tom, his top man, and worked with him closely before he went to California to be with his lovely bride. So
King Kanji comes to mind there, Tommy.
King Kanji was a fun horse.
Was such a special horse.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of hit the West Point profile. It was we'd go to the 2-year-old in training sales, and we'd give up some pedigree for good athletes that we felt that could make an impact. King Kanji was a hard trying horse. He was a grass horse for the most part, but lost the bluegrass by a nose. I mean, we ran in the Preakness. I mean, he won graded stakes. I mean, it was just a great horse. He's out at Old Friends here at Cabin Creek in Saratoga now. But it was, for me, I just felt that, try to live your dreams. I tell people that all the time when I go in speaking engagements and I talk to younger people. It's like, if you can ever find a way to make a living doing what you love to do, it's great. I love dealing with the public for the most part. I owned a bar for 10 years. I love dealing with people. I love being it. But it was a shot in the dark for Terry to try, have faith in me, and vice versa, for me to have faith in them that this would be a good move. And first few years were rocky, but we've had a great run. We're almost 20 years together. So.
Well, I think you all have had such a positive impact on this industry. So thank you for making that switch from corporate America. But I can tell you personally how fantastic the owner experiences is with West Point. I mean, I remember I was just 5 or 6 years old walking around Saratoga with the Atami and Jeff Lifson at Churchill. How does the ownership experience differ from other syndicates at West Point Thoroughbreds, and how can you become a part of an owner?
Yeah, I think how it's different now compared to maybe 15, 20 years ago is we live in a different, social media has changed the whole world that we live in. And I mean, I don't want to sound really old, but even cell phones and things like that, it's just so much more communication and things are expected immediately. Whereas in the old days, we would update our horses once a week, and which we still do as a whole stable. But now that transparency, that need for knowledge is so important. And for someone who gets involved with West Point as a partner, you're selling them access. You're selling them a chance to be behind the velvet rope. And the great part about our sport, and I think all of you would agree, you go to a Yankee game or something, the chances of meeting Derek Jeter are maybe 1 in a million, right? You get to watch him, you can wave to him. But you're in horse racing, our stars are accessible. If I can get somebody to come out in the morning at the backstretch of Saratoga and have a coffee and watch the animals go by and watch the trainers come by and watch the jockeys and the ages come by. This is our sport, and it's accessible. And I think our ownership experience, I've become a big believer in transparency. That, there's going to be good news, there's going to be bad news. And a sales trainer taught me this a number of years ago. Bad news doesn't age well. So when there's bad news, you got to be straight with people and tell them. And you just got to hope that they know that you have their best interests at heart. We're a racing syndicate. It doesn't help me to have a horse not running or scratching from a race or anything like that. But, we live and breathe it. And I think we've had people over the years that work for the company that if you don't love it, I mean, this is a tough business, as Christina knows better than anybody. It's 7 days a week, and good news, bad news, things happen at the weirdest times. And if you don't absolutely love it, there's far easier ways to make a living in life,
I would say too, Tommy, I'll just jump in. Don't you feel like as you're communicating more with your partners and with your owners and taking them along every step of the journey, it is more about the whole experience. Of course, race day is a huge part of it, and we want to win every single day and every single time you're running. But I think when people really understand all the little steps that it takes to get to a race, the wins are that much more gratifying, and the losses, even if you run second, third, fourth, are that much more palatable because you know how much hard work went into that one experience, that 2 minutes out there on the racetrack.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think what we've tried to share with our partners and through all the channels that we communicate that is they take possession of the whole stable. Sort of like Christina, Dan has certain owners and they all root for Dan's horses. And that's kind of what we're looking to do with our partnerships is, hey, those are our silks. That's my racing. That's my stable. And whether they own that individual horse or not, if they can take emotional possession, it really leads to an incredible experience because we have tons of partners who own a horse together and then they have different horses, but they take an interest and it's something that over the years has developed and it's contagious. It's so fraternal.
I love it. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for your time today. This has been incredibly interesting. And please, everyone, go check out westpointtb.com for more information on West Point.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Well, that was cool. I never knew about those silks. I'm glad I asked. Anyway,
I'm
so
glad
today's
they work it out ahead of time because you never know.
Right.
Very important details.
Very much.
Well, let's dive right into these races. So today's show will be going over the Remington Springboard Mile Stakes at Remington Park, the Tropical Park Derby at Gulfstream, and the G2 Los Alamitos Futurity. So the 300K Remington Springboard Mile Stakes this Friday night at Remington, a mile on the dirt for 2-year-olds, a road to the Kentucky Derby prep race with 10 points on the line. Long Range Toddy, Senior Buscador, a couple big names to have won this race in the past. Last year's winner was Otto the Conqueror with Tyler Gaffalione aboard for trainer Steven Asmussen's 7th all-time win in the Springboard Mile Stakes. Asmussen has 3 of the 12 entries in here. Corey, does he get his 8th?
No. I actually have gone in a different way here. And I think it's interesting because when you look at this field, a lot of these are just coming out of maiden races. And just kind of hard to understand. They're from around the country. Some of them are locally based. Some of them are coming in from other Kentucky tracks around the country. And I looked at where they've run and who they faced. And I landed on the one horse, Cole Battle, at 10-1. A nice long shot here for Lonnie Briley and Juan Vargas. And I just think he's faced the best competition in here. And if you go down and you look at the horses that he's run against, he lost to Poster, 2-back, Ben's horse last week in that turf mile at Keeneland. Came back to win the Remsen, and to Tiz-tastic in the $1 million juvenile turf mile at Kentucky Downs, which is always a tough race. And I mean, that's a pretty lucrative $1 million race. So Tiz-tastic came back after that race to finish second in the Grade 3 Street Sense Stakes and then third in the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. So has faced good competition and acquitted himself pretty well in both of those. Came home well, finished up nicely. And honestly, I think the pace in here should set up just fine for him to come from off the pace, likes the distance, and it should set up for him to come nicely. Now, a couple little small things. He also ran under the lights in his last race, and that was a 6.5 furlong race at Delta Downs and a kind of an overnight stakes, and it's not terribly great competition, but it's good to have that experience to run at night. It's going to happen here. Had a challenging trip, to say the least, in that race, if you went back and watched it, because I did. Kind of an eye-catching sweeping move into the lane and pulled away late in that stakes race. So I like the way the horse is moving. He's jumped in Equibase speed figures in each race, posting that 87 in his last, which is good for third best overall in here. Together, Vargas and Briley are 4 or 5, 80% over the last 45 days in the exacta together. So at 10-1, that's juicy up there in the exotics. They win at 20% together all time, 24% together on dirt. And in 1 mile races, dirt races at Remington Park, Post 1 has the most wins, 6, and the highest win rate, 29% over the last 30 days as well. Also the most wins and highest win rate over the past year as well. So could get it done on the rail at a decent price and spring the upset here in the springboard is the way I'm looking at it.
I love it. I had that horse for second, and you're kind of putting me on him even more. But I'm interested to hear Christina's top play in here.
I went for a bit of, well, I guess kind of a horse that I think will take a little bit of attention, but it is a bit of a question mark still for me. So I'm going to give you my top selection, but I'm going to say if this horse takes too much money, I'm not sure that you really want to support him as he's trying something for the first time. I like the 3 Speed King in here for Ron Moquette. He's a son of Volatile. If you take a look back at that race at Churchill Downs, he only has 1 race under his belt. It was November the 1st, and it was going 6 furlongs. It's a really impressive replay. He split horses going down the backstretch, absolutely dragged the rider up to the front, and he really seemed to finish with something left. He was 2 1/4 lengths clear of the rest of the group that day. He earned a really strong Thorograph speed figure if you check those. But the offspring of Volatile are only 1 for 21 in dirt routes. And so that's a bit of a concern. This is going to be the first time that he does go the mile distance. I will say as a young horse and over a track like Remington, going the flat mile, maybe he's not one that's going to go on beyond the mile, but he could be fast enough to give himself a little bit of separation from this field, I think, coming up at the weekend. He's also out of a mare who does have some experience on the grass at the route. She was a winner at a mile on the turf. And I actually reached out to Ron Moquette because we're sending some on-site coverage. I think it's Scott Hazelton is heading to Remington to cover the weekend for us for FanDuel. And Ron said, I believe his build suggests he'll like the route of ground. He has the size. His bottom side of the pedigree indicates that there's a shot he'll like it. But he said, to be honest, we will all find out together at about 10:53 Central Time. So I guess it's a bit of a question mark for them too. And I think that's fair. The statistics are pushing you that way. But his race was so impressive. He, seems to be a longer built horse just from what I can see on the replay. So I'm hoping he can get it. But then again, as I said to kind of start, if this horse gets hammered down, I just wouldn't take too short of a price on him because you have to assess where your value comes into play at that stage. I thought if you were looking for maybe a bit more of a price in the group, I mean, Jolly Samurai makes sense. He's going to take money in here. The Steve Asmussen and a gun runner just to his inside, Blue Angel. That replay on the other side of the coin didn't really do a lot for me. Taking a look at it, he was between horses. He seemed a little unfocused. He kind of just did what he needed to do to win. But he has the pedigree to get there. 18% dirt route winners from Gunrunner at Steve Asmussen. That he was a $230,000 purchase. I think there's some tools they attract David Cabrera that you can kind of throw together to assume that this horse has more to give than what we saw. So if you're trying to put some prices underneath, that would be a direction I think you can go. But ultimately, it's that Churchill form and Speed King with the replay for me on top.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I actually saw a video of Speed King, his last work. I got it sent to me. The strides are just enormous, like really impressive. What a pretty horse. So definitely not going to talk you off there, but I do agree. Lower than 7-2 could be a little bit tough. I guess we're all going different this race. I'm going with the 9, Dr. Ruben M. with the morning line of 6-1. Avina Rosso Colt for the Doug O'Neill barn with Edwin Maldonado taking the trip from Cali to ride. It took him 4 starts to break his maiden, but he's coming off a really nice win in a maiden special weight at Santa Anita back in mid-October in a 2-turn mile race, which I think is huge. At this mile distance, going around 2 turns, he has a win running 88 Equibase speed figure and a second running an 80 Equibase speed figure. Progeny of his dam, XOXO, win at 33% in dirt routes lifetime. 5 wins from 15 starts with a plus 87% ROI. In his last start, that mile distance, he set the pace at 22 and 4/5 seconds, and half mile in 47 and 1. He was still able to hold on. Ranked first in early and middle pace, ranked first in average class, and oddly enough, and then second in average speed with an 81. Love Maldonado being in the irons on Friday. O'Neill and Maldonado winning at a 30% clip in the last 3 years with maiden winners last time out. 6 wins from 20 starts and 11 in the money with a plus 58% ROI. And his only finish out of the money, finished 5th to getaway car after stumbling at the start. So been working well at 6-1, my play all day.
I got to disagree with you, and that's why we're on this podcast a little bit. And you know how much I respect Doug.
You do, yes.
And I love Doug, but I'm not sure I'm going to stand by him on this one.
Okay.
You watched that last race. I thought the horse was getting pretty tired at the end. Led every step, had it his own way, and came running. And I don't know that he's going to have the same setup on this race. Doug O'Neill, a couple of stats here. Has never won a race at Remington. 0 for 7.
I did see that.
0 for 7, 2 place finishes. Edwin Maldonado and Doug O'Neill have not won a stakes route race together in the last year, 0 for 8. And then the one that's interesting here, over the past 2 years, Doug is 0 for 19 when previously starting a horse in a dirt maiden special weight race, then running it in a dirt stakes next. So 11 times out of the money there. So if you're just a stats guy here, brings a little stats, I don't know.
Right.
I think this horse is going to come up quite a bit in our handicapping later on in the Los Al. So keep that in mind.
Yes, fair enough. Well, you got me a little less confident now, but I'm going to stay true to my 6-1 Dr. Ruben M. So there you have it. There's the Remington Springboard Mile Stakes. Corey is going with Coal Battle, Christina Speed King, and I'm going with Dr. Ruben M. Let's head east down to Florida for the Tropical Park Derby at Gulfstream Park, 1 mile and a 16th on the turf for 3-year-olds. Last year's winner was Super Blessing at odds of 12-1. Michael Trombetta with Edwin Gonzalez aboard. Full field of 12 in here, plus 2 also eligibles. Christina, who is your top play?
Well, so we're going to have to take a look at the updates and scratches and changes the morning of the race, because I think the horse to beat is actually sitting on the outside looking in right now, and that's the 13 Echo Lane. Echo Lane is a son of Treasure Beach. He has, I think, really blossomed towards the end of this 3-year-old season. I thought that allowance win at Churchill Downs last time out was really impressive. Is at the 1 and a 16th distance. I don't like the outside post for him. If he does draw in, he is going to be stuck out pretty wide. But he's a horse that has a little bit of tactical speed, and so I think he puts himself in a good spot. He was only beaten 3 lengths by Deterministic in the Virginia Derby 2 starts back at Colonial. So if he draws in, Echo Lane, the 13, will be my top selection. If he doesn't, I'll go further to the inside. I think there's a lot of talent in this group. We just heard from Tom Bellhouse with West Point. They have Cugino, the 10 in here. He's a horse that should be rallying from off of it and has kept top class company. I think Palm Tree is interesting for Brendan Walsh, the Godolphin runner. He's a bit of a deep closer, ended up pretty far behind Donegal Momentum in his last race, but he's had a freshening since then. Donegal Momentum was, I believe, 4th in the Grade 1 Hollywood Derby, and that was a really tough field out at Del Mar kind of towards the end of November. But I landed on Silent Heart in the event that the 13 doesn't draw in, and because I think he's a similar horse on paper in that he has that ability to get a jump on some of the other horses I just mentioned. I think he gets the jump on Cugino. I think he gets the jump on Palm Tree in here and sits a nice tactical trip. He's proven at the distance. He likes Gulfstream Park. He's 2 for 3 here for Brian Lynch. And he won going away in that last start, which I really appreciated. So a little bit of a middle in terms of the top selection right now, but watching those scratches and changes for me, most likely ending up on Silent Heart in here.
That's my top play too. I'll just tell you now, but I'm interested to know what Corey has to say.
Well, I'm going to go with the rarely seen all coal front sired post 1 stakes picks. All right, going back to that.
Do you have a stat on that? Have you pulled that one yet?
I don't have that, but this will be one for the ages if I can pull this one off. But I do like the inside horse, the one horse, Live High, Live Low. I think the horse is rapidly improving, has not quite faced the class of the others in here for sure, but you see 5 straight increasing Equibase speed figures. Look, George Weaver already won for 1 at the meet. All time, if you look at just how he performs with Edgar Zayas, they hit it 47%, 7 of 15 in turf route races together, all time. Okay, 12 of those 15 in the money. So they pick up good mounts together. All of those were at Gulfstream Park. All right. So overall, Weaver and Zayas win at 28% in just all races, 10 of 36 together, and 20% in 2024. So that gives me a lot of confidence on the horse. Over the last 5 years, Post 1 wins the most races and has the best winning percentage at Gulfstream and 1 and a 16th turf races. So I like the post position a bit. There've only been 5 coal front progeny to run in a turf route at Gulfstream all time. They've not won yet, but 2 place finishes in 1 show say they can compete. I really expect the Redamone colt to just settle and make a run. Weaver is 22% going sprint to route, so might have a bit more speed from the rail to show. If you look at the purchase price, and sometimes you have to look at that, it's a $2,000 price for a coal front, and they paid $90,000 at the OBS yearling sale. So he's likely pretty well put together. Already won at Gulfstream and at the distance and likes to win races and hit the board. I'm looking for an upset in here with the 1 Live High, Live Low.
I love it. It was definitely very interesting. Yeah, George Weaver and Edgar Zayas out there. But yeah, I'm not going to knock your pick. I don't have the morning lines with me. I don't know if you all do, but
Right.
I'm assuming you're going to. Okay, now I'm assuming you're going to get a pretty good price on that one.
Please.
But I do wholeheartedly agree with Christina here on Silent Heart. Clear winner for the Brian Lynch stable with Edgar Perez aboard. First thing that jumped off the page to me was that really nice 5 furlong bullet work in 59.1 on the turf on December 1st at Palm Meadows. And coming off a really nice win in that showing up stakes at Gulfstream November 2nd, going a mile and 16th on the turf this distance today. I ran a 97 Equibase speed figure, winning by 3 1/4 lengths in the second route of his life. The first time he ran a route race was a mile in the Colonel St. Liam Stakes at Gulfstream back in March, where he finished third by just a neck to Abramar and Cugino in here. In that race, the 5th, 8th, and 9th place finishers came back to win their next start. So I know that's a while ago, but it's still a tough race. Heads to Keeneland for the Palisades, finishes 6th, but just by 2 3/4 lengths. And that's going 5.5 furlongs on the turf. So I think he's in a really good spot here, going a route distance back on the turf. And Brian Lynch, by the way, here's some stat lines. Corey's favorite thing in the world. He's been on fire in the past 30 days, winning 3 of 4 stakes races with a $2 ROI of $6.45. He's winning at 35% in all races with 6 wins from 17 starts and 12 in the money in the past 30 days. So I'm going to go with the on fire barn here with Silent Heart and hoping to get an okay price. I'm assuming Cugino will get a majority of the money, but could be wrong.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a stat on Cugino because you want to look. There's a lot to like about Cugino for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you one stat that's interesting, a little bit under the radar. Love Shug McGahee, but he's just 1 for 21, 5% over the past 365 days in turf routes at Gulfstream, and only wins at 7%, 6 of 83 over the past 3 years, running out over 60% of the time in turf routes. Also 0 for 10 this year using Jose Ortiz Jr., which is crazy, running out 7 times there. So, look, love Cugino, but just something to consider in your handicap.
Yeah, I agree. But also at the same time, he is dropping, back to a non-graded stake. And the last time he did that, he romped in the Autobahn. So there's merit for sure, But yeah, we'll see if he gets that money. We think he will. But so there you go. Christina is on Silent Heart and Echo Lane if he is in. And Corey is on Live High, Live Low. Finally, the lone graded stakes race of the entire week across North America. The Grade 2 Los Alamitos Futurity, formerly known as the Cash Call Futurity at then Hollywood Park. A mile and a 16th on the dirt for 2-year-olds. 10 points are on the line on the road to the Kentucky Derby. Legendary horses have won this race in the past. Best Pal, AP Indy, Real Quiet, one of my favorite horses of all time, Brother Derek. Into Mischief, Pioneer of the Nile, Looking at Lucky, Violence, Shared Belief, Dortmund. Last year's winner was Winstock for trainer Bob Baffert with Kyle Frey aboard. Bob Baffert has won this race 11 times in the last 16 years, including 7 years in a row from 2014 through 2020. He has 3 of the 5 entries in here with Gaming and Getaway Car in their first start back since running 2nd and 4th, respectively, in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to Citizen Bull. He's also trained by Bob Baffert. Can Baffert be beaten here, or is it a gimme race? What's that stat on Corey on Baffert at Los Al? It's got to be a little less than 50 now because
well, this is interesting. I have it for you. I'll just go ahead and say I'm going with Gaming on the inside, the number 1 horse for you said it, Bob Baffert. So it's really interesting. So Baffert wins at right now, as of today, 49%, 24 of 49 at Los Alamitos since January 2023. He won with 2 of his 5 starters in the past week, including the Starlet, where he had 3 starters of those 5, and his winning percentage actually dropped by a point. His other 2 starters finished 1-2 in a straight maiden during the week. So I'm sorry, he's just not hitting the way he was last week. He was at 50% coming into last week's race. So just unbelievable, right? I'll look at this on the rail. I think there's a lot to like about Gaming. It makes sense. I mean, he's going to take a lion's share of the money for sure. This is not some deep selection. But Baffert and Flavian Pratt, 9 of 18, 50% together at Los Alamitos all time, and 16 of 18 in the money, 43% together in Los Al and dirt route races alone. So they know how to get it done. Pratt wins at 30% in stakes races at Los Al all time. Pratt's won this race twice. All 7 times he's running this, he's had a mount in this race. He's finished in the money. look, if you go back, I mean, I don't really even have to tell people that are listening probably about this horse because it's, ran second in that merry-go-round race at Del Mar in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to Baffert's winner, Citizen Bull. Finished 3.5 lengths clear of the rest of that field that was really not gaining any ground on them at all. He had Pratt up for his win in the Del Mar Futurity when he beat Citizen Bull. And in his debut, I think he showed enough speed to potentially be able to grab the lead in here if he really wants it from the rail and set the pace. He can sit kind of where he wants. He went 21 and change, 44-4 that day. He's paired 103 Equibase speed figures in last two, proven at the distance. I mean, that's important too. It is super early, but Pratt, coming out all the way out here to ride in this one race makes me wonder if he thinks this might be a potential Derby mount in the spring. I mean, he's not flying out for the Sky Miles. He's might also be trying to set that greatest stakes record with this win. So there's a lot to like with the horse on the rail, and I think there's a lot of signals that this horse is ready to roll.
Very true. Definitely the one to beat. And I'm assuming off a $2 bet, you might get 20 cents.
As I said, it's not creative, but sometimes you got to find the winner, right?
Well, Christina, I think you had some similar thoughts, but let's hear it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the point that Corey made about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and that merry-go-round and the top three Baffert horses just carrying each other around the turn. I mean, doesn't that just happen again? Three Baffert horses in this 5-horse field. They're drawn alongside each other. I don't know what order they're going to be in because I think if they could have chosen, would have broken to the outside of Getaway Car. I think Getaway Car might be one of the faster of the three, but I think that that's what's going to happen. I think that's what we're going to see. And independent of them being able to control the pace because they have 3 of the 5 in there, he has some of the best form. He has the best form, and I don't think he's going to have any issue with the long stretch at Los Alamitos. I think that's one thing you always have to consider when you're handicapping these races is who really finishes their races. He finished well. I think Journalism to the Outside finished well in his race at Del Mar. I think he's interesting in here, but the form, the pace, the team, the stats, it's all putting you behind gaming in this group.
Fair enough. Yeah, everything is kind of pointing towards it, but I'm going to try to beat him. I'm going to go with the 5 Journalism. Curlin Colt out of Uncle Mo Mare, who's bought for $825,000. So they came to play Michael McCarthy barn, and McCarthy's been hot, winning 43% of stakes races in the last 30 days, 3 of 7 stat lines. Corey almost beat Baffert's 10 mile last week with Look Forward. And Umberto Rispoli gets them out on Saturday. McCarthy and Rispoli are winning at a 46% clip in the last 3 years together, with maiden winners last time out, 6 wins from 13 starts, and 69% in the money with a plus 58% ROI. And they're winning at 22% in graded stakes races together in the last 3 years, 5 wins from 23 starts. A couple of things that really stand out. Ran a career best 103 Equibase speed figure last time out, winning a 2-turn mile maiden special weight at Del Mar, beating number 4 Rank in here. Ran an 86 in his career debut, and his average speed is a 95. Ranked second only to gaming. So that's I think that's huge, and he's actually has a better speed average than Getaway Car in here. And Journalism also ranks second in late pace with the 112 and only to gaming in here. He's a grade 1 winner, finished second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So progeny of Curlin the last 5 years as well are winning at 20% and 50% in the money in dirt second routes, 51 wins from 250 starts. I totally understand gaming will be 1-9 and most likely win, but I think there is a good argument for Journalism out there, and hopefully to get a nice price. But anyway, that is all the time we have for this show. Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you so much, Corey. This has been just a blast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good luck in your wagers this weekend. We'll see you next week.